How would you live in possible worlds? In this video, we'll talk about the options. We'll talk about the eternity and we'll talk about life. Because after getting the clear shape about the tonal structure, during my search for the meaningful connection about the Turkish music, I was trying to understand the cultural background. And there was one term fascinated me. It's called reverse perspective. I took that term from Pavel Frerensky, who is a kind of polymath. He studied philosophy, art story, and mathematics, law, religion, and he wrote an article. It's called Reverse Perspective. During that time, I was again trying to understand the cultural heritage of the Ottoman Turkish music. But especially in that book, what I saw that, it's a kind of to understand the real structure about the Ottoman Turkish music, I need to understand the cultural framework of Ottoman Turkish music, which is Middle Age visual art. It's called reverse perspective. After learning the details about the reverse perspective, but that's very conflictual, I know that. I took the book, I took an article, and by means of that article, I had a solution about understanding Ottoman Turkish music. That's very interesting, right? But that article is about the visual art technique in Middle Age. It's called reverse perspective. But when I start to see the connection, structure, and then the technical details about the reverse perspective, I have seen a lot of similarities between the Ottoman Turkish music and Middle Age art form. And that's really interesting for me. And at the beginning, it was just kind of the beginning of understanding the Ottoman Turkish music and Ottoman culture and also Middle Age culture and also Renaissance. And at the end of the book, I was having a really serious question about my musical identity. I was asking that question: how am I going to incorporate reverse perspective into jazz and contemporary music harmony? And at that time, and also I found very interesting connection between the tonal structure and another perspective. It's called linear perspective. Because when you look at all the Renaissance visual techniques, there was a transformation from the sacred form of composition in visual art to secular form of composition. And to realize that transformation, they used linear perspective. They didn't invent the linear perspective because it's already available. It's having already available for the Renaissance artists. But according to life requirements, they use this technique to express their new art form in this technique. It's called linear perspective. And also, when you check the similarities between the visual art form and the music, there is a tonal structure. Tonal harmony is a counterpart of linear perspective. Julian Johnson is a very important theoretician and also composer who wrote the book called Out of Time. In his book, he had the same claim about the tonal harmony. But in my master thesis, I had the chance to find the connection between tonal structure and linear perspective. Especially harmonic regions help me to understand that relationship. Because let's hear the sound and compare these two spheres and the music and the visual art. And when we have if you want to understand the linear perspective, as you can see from the example, all the lines converging to vanishing points, right? When you have the deeper vanishing points, your composition, visual composition has deeper space. That creates depth for the visual expression. And the same thing is happening in tonal harmony. For example, when we have the chords from diatonic chords, we have C major, E minor, A minor, D minor, G dominant, and we have the C major. Composition sounds like close the surface, right? And that's why you cannot get the kind of depthness And because of that reason, we start to develop our harmonic vocabulary by means of structural progressions based on fourths. And the first one, secondary dominant, we have little depth about that progression, right? For example, C major 7, then the first non-diatonic, E dominant and A minor. This is, but because of its level, it doesn't have the real influence about the depth. But then we have related 2 minor. Okay, I mean, it gives us different colors, but in terms of the vanishing points, our composition still close to the surface, right? But when we have the harmonic chords from harmonic region, we start to see real depth in the music. Let's remember our subdominant minor chords, subdominant major chords, and when you compare these chords, these progressions with the more diatonic chords, with more diatonic and diatonically related chords, you can see the difference. Okay, for example, I play C major and E minor, then for example F minor, then D flat, major, G dominant and C major. And you can have the sense of direction change, right? By means of that change, and we can sense of the vanishing point as it's getting further and further away from the center. And by means of these relationships, we can have the tool to manage our compositions on the base of centricity. If you want to have the close centricity, you can use the diatonic chords or diatonically related chords. If you want to have the deeper vanishing point in terms of visual art expression, you can use the more chords from harmonic regions. And this is the main mechanism, main to structure about the tonal harmony. That's why we can have the sense of the similarities between the linear perspective and tonal harmony. Also, when you look at the intellectual life of Western civilization and when you look at the philosophy, for example, Descartes did the same thing for philosophy. And look at the Newton, for example. He took that approach, applied to the physics. And also Kant, he also did the same thing, because this is a paradigm and this is linear perspective paradigm. But towards the 20th century music, there was a kind of problem about the centricity. All the musicians, composers, they were trying to break all the rules about the centricity. They were trying to collapse the centricity, and that's why they invented new devices for their expression without centricity. Especially when we talk about the non-functional harmony, we use descriptive analysis because there is no centric value. There is no centricity in that chord progression. Especially pattern-based chord progressions created the space for our new design. But in that situation, I was kind of suspicious about the structure, because when you don't have the center, all these pattern structures created fragmented form of expression, fragmented form of composition. I wanted to get the more unified form of non-functional chord structures. Because of that reason, reverse perspective gave me a chance to design that structure. And the funny thing about the reverse perspective in my life, a year after my reverse perspective album, the movie called Tenet, seen in theaters and directed by Christopher Nolan. When I was watching Tenet, it was a crazy moment for me, because I could understand what's going on in that movie. Because probably you know the debates about the Tenet. It's a kind of division of the opinions. Most of them, they said, okay, it's very complicated movie, nobody can understand, it's very sophisticated, very abstract form of designing a movie. Some of them loved it, but I think Christopher Nolan was trying to create a reverse perspective approach in that movie. But his description about the movie, he said that Tenet deals with the concept of inversion, which is the idea that the entropy of an object or a person could be reversed. I mean, that's very, very funny because I mean, I use the same technique to create the reverse perspective effect, which is called inversional symmetry. And when we talk about negative harmony video, actually negative harmony design is based on the same thing, because to create the new axis, he used the reverse side of the tonality. They call that's why they call this negative harmony. But I was trying to apply the different thing about this structure, because in reverse perspective compositions, when you look at the Middle Age visual art, and also when you check the Middle Age calligraphies, and you can when you look at the Middle Age visual arts, you can, I mean, feel kind of the confusion about the structure, because there are a lot of centers, but I mean, when you pick any center composition, I mean, turn out to be in a different scenario. As you can see from the example, and in reverse perspective technique, we have polycentredness. That's why when you pick any center, then you can have different composition, but when you change your center, you can have a different composition. That's why it has a lot of it has possible worlds. Because of that reason, when you pick any point in the reverse perspective technique, it's called the primary point. But when you pick different point, it's called subordinate. But when you change the direction, every point has multiple function. This is the uniqueness of reverse perspective. And before showing the structure about reverse perspective in my musical arrangement, and let's talk about the inversional symmetry. Inversional symmetry is very important, a special term for the post-tonal theory. But let me explain the basic structure of inversional symmetry. And we have, for example, C. If you want to make it center for the C, we can have 6 options. For example, we can have B and D flat, okay? It's a kind of equal division, that's why we have center C. And also because of equally divided manner, we have B flat, C and D. Again, C is in the center, and then A, C and E flat. Again, we have, this is minor second, this is major second. Look at this, minor second, major second, major second, and minor third, major third, and major third. And still we are in the symmetrically divided section. Then we have G, C, F. And the last one, we have 2 centers. This is G flat and C, because of equal division. And look at the options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is for inversional symmetry. We have 6 options. That's gonna be our structural reference. This is inversional symmetry. By means of this divisions, we can have symmetrical division. And that's why when you look at these structures, they have all the centers, C, but even though they have different intervals, the C is our center. And also the important thing about this, and because of that relationship, for example, take the name Tenet. When you look at the Tenet, start from the left and you will get the Tenet. Start from right, you will get the Tenet. This is inversional symmetry. Okay, that's why in his explanation he used the term inversion to get the reverse effect. And I did the same thing. And by means of multifunctional, the qualities of the chords that I created, I have for example, different dimensions for each chord, and that creates a kind of not the pattern-based progression, but more unified and a more integrated form of progression. And let me explain the chord construction. Okay, when we have, for example, I'll play one of the songs in my reverse perspective album. It's called Light and Shade. Let me play the chord structures for you. A minor, E flat major 7, C sharp 7, D minor 7, B flat major 7, G flat major 7, and C major 7. Okay, Let's write them. A minor 7, E flat major 7. Then we have C sharp minor 7, D minor 7, and B flat major 7, and G flat major 7. Last chord here, C major 7. Okay, let me show how inversion symmetry technique takes place in these 8 bars. Okay, look at the first 2 chords. We have A flat and E flat. I took that 6 variations to create that progression. And in terms of chord qualities, I wanted to use the minor and major 7. Why? Because they are more stable than the dominant 7th chords, and we had a discussion for the dominant 7th chord, especially in non-functional chord structures, because that gives kind of the color for tonal tendency. Okay, and what about the D minor? Because we have pattern from variation 1, and we have the E flat, C sharp, and D. And according to D, E flat minor 2nd, and look at the distance between C sharp and D, that creates the centric quality for D minor 7. And in this 4 bar, we have 2 temporary centers. But the important thing about the reverse perspective, according to A minor 7, E flat has different function, and according to D minor 7, E flat has different functions. We have 2 possible words in the section, right? And this is the main quality of reverse perspective. And let's move on to other progressions, other chord relationships. Look at this G flat. And for G flat major 7, I used the major 3rd relationship, the number 4. It's going to be my model for the G flat center. Look at the D minor 7, then we have B flat major 7, and new temporary center is G flat major 7. And we have equally divided chord progression. Here it's coming from, number 6. Then we have 3 important points about that progression. And because E flat major 7 has 2 functions according to different directions. If you start from the left, it has the function from number 6. And when you look at the D minor 7, it has the function 4. It has a function from number 6. And for the D minor 7, it has a subordinate function. Okay, when we have the D minor 7, according to E flat major 7 and C sharp minor 7, it has a primary function. But according to G flat major 7, it has subordinate function. That's why I call them multifunctional. That creates the reverse, the influence, the reverse perspective approach in the chord progression. It happens in the same way in Middle Age visual art technique. Let's hear them again and to compare that relationship on the basis of these explanations. Okay, and this is first chord, A minor 7, E flat major 7, C sharp minor 7, D minor 7, B flat major 7, G flat major 7, C major 7. And what I love about reverse perspective, there is center, there is living center, but it's hidden. It's unknown. It's almost impossible to find. Life, flows in the same way, right? We have to deal with the uncertainties. We have to deal with a lot of complicated issues, right? To have the balanced relationship with life and also ourselves. And by means of reverse perspective and by means of this kind of multi-dimensional approach, I began to have the very strong relationship with the eternity. Because in life there is nothing certain, but if you have the multi-dimensional aspect, you start to focus on yourself more. But if you want to have the certain things, if you want to have the result oriented, if you wanted to have the result oriented approach, then reverse perspective will be dangerous for you. And that's why, I mean, after I released that album in 2019, and then after having that relationship, after having that experience, I left all the techniques because I have very authentic relationship with music making process. I started to focus on more melodies, rhythm, harmony in an authentic, organic and intimate way. And that's just technique. That's why after Reverse Perspective album, I released my other album. It's called Synthetic Vision, because Reverse Perspective helped me to design a new life for me, and I just wanted to present a concrete result of that approach. That's why I call it synthetic vision, because synthetic doesn't mean has a kind of the unorganic. Synthetic means here like the unified approach about the vision. That's why I call this. And when you have the analytic means division, but when you have the synthetic means the unification. And that I mean helped me. This is just a technique, but that open up new directions for my life. That also Christopher Nolan's Tenet is a huge surprise for me. And by means of these experiences, the memories, I left my inauthentic parts and I left myself towards the more authentic relationship with the music, life and myself. See you in the next video. Thank you for listening to my story.